In case you've been living under a rock and know nothing about the PS1 era of games, let me give you a little crash course for the purposes of this video. Sony and Nintendo decided to duke it out in that generation of consoles, with the N64 going toe-to-toe with the PS1. I'm not here to go into the history of Nintendo versus Sony, but essentially a business deal falling through between the two of them would lead to the birth of the PlayStation. The thing is, Nintendo already had a stellar line of mascots ready for the N64. Mario is still doing his thing, but there's also Zelda, Donkey Kong, and Star Fox to name a few. Sony didn't have much at this time at all. That's where Crash Bandicoot comes in. They even made a commercial where Crash Bandicoot pulls up outside of Nintendo's headquarters and starts heckling Mario.
I'm over here stroking my dick, I got lotion on my dick.
This might have led you to believe that Crash Bandicoot was the de facto mascot for Sony, and you wouldn't be entirely wrong. However, just as Nintendo had Mario and The Legend of Zelda, Sony needed more than Crash Bandicoot if they were going to succeed. This led to the birth of our plucky purple dragon, Spyro. Spyro came late to the party, being released in 1998 after being created by Insomniac Games, aka the same guys who would go on to create Ratchet & Clank, Resistance Fall of Man, as well as Marvel's Spider-Man. However, they also made Sunset Overdrive for Xbox before being acquired outright by Sony. Unfortunately, while Spyro was created by Insomniac Games, the rights for Spyro didn't belong to them. The rights eventually went to Activision of all companies after the company who owned them sold them off, and now that Microsoft owns them, Spyro has funnily enough gone to the opposite end of the field. I should also mention that hilariously on Insomniac's own website, they claim that Spyro debuted in '96. Probably just a typo, but funny nonetheless. Unfortunately, as of now, Spyro is dead in the water yet again, as the Reignited trilogy seemingly did very little in convincing Activision the Purple Dragon deserves more chances to spread his wings. Toys for Bob, the developers of the Reignited trilogy, also have no affiliation with Microsoft or Activision anymore, so the future of our sensual purple reptile is up in the air. I can see it now, a mass grave of all of Microsoft's dead platformers. Here lies Spyro, Crash, Banjo, and Conker. That's why we're going through Spyro 1 to show you guys that this lovable purple dragon deserves to soar. Before I dive into the actual gameplay, I want to talk about Spyro himself first. Look at this beautiful bastard. No, not that. Definitely not that. Jesus. That's better. I don't know what it is about Spyro, but everything down to his stance and his cocky little face oozes so much personality. He's like the 90s personified in a much more digestible way than Sonic sometimes. Sorry to say, but Sonic really grinds my gears when he speaks sometimes. Spyro, not so much. This goes for his characterization in the entire series. He's smaller than all the other dragons, but he packs a big punch, even down to his personality. His character truly embodies a cool form of whimsy, even down to the purple they chose to color him with. As a kid, I loved how cool he looked and how it felt everyone kept underestimating him based on his size alone. It made me feel like even as a small kid, I was capable of big things like Spyro. Turns out those big things would be me bitching about video games from the comfort of my bedroom, but you know, tomato tomato. I played a ton of Spyro 1 and 2 growing up on my PSP, as you could buy PS1 classics on your PS3 and play them across both systems. I would take my PSP with me to school, and this gave me the chance to play games like Spyro and Crash on the school bus, so while we go through this video, it will be hard for me to disconnect myself from those positive memories. However, I will try to remain as objective as possible. Despite growing up with the PS1 versions of those games, today I'll be talking about the Reignited trilogy version of Spyro 1, as that is a version most people can access the easiest. As someone who grew up with the games, the Reignited versions are great for anyone looking to get into these games. There's definitely a lot of charm in the original versions, but you're not missing much if you don't go back and play them. Diving into the game, the story is a pretty simple setup. The world of dragons is where the dragons live. Who would have guessed? And when we see them, they're actually doing an interview in which the dragons are mouthing off, calling the main bad guy of this game Nasty Nork, ugly and stupid. Listen, I don't know about you guys, but in the city, if you call a big dude ugly and stupid, he's gonna rock your shit, so I'm Team Nork on this one. Nasty Nork then decides to fire off a beam of magic, turning all the dragons into crystals, except for SpongeBob Dragon Pants over here. For those of you unaware, Mr. Tom Kenny, aka the voice of SpongeBob SquarePants, also voices Spyro. Originally in Spyro 1 back in 1998, he had a much more nasally voice before Kenny took over in Spyro 2 and 3. I'm glad that they decided to have him reprise his role as Spyro for all 3 games here, as opposed to making him sound like he has a sinus infection.
Looks like I've got some things to do.
And that's all the setup we get. Run through the 5 realms, collect treasure, and free the dragons, then take on Nasty Nork in his own realm at the end. We start off in Artisans in the first world of the game, and we're treated to lush green grass and a small open area to run around in. Spyro's main abilities include the ability to charge, glide, and spit fire. That's not what I meant. This is a great way to get your bearings on the controls, which are buttery smooth. Spyro controls wonderfully, and the controls never led to any deaths where I felt cheated. They even added the ability to use your flame attack with the trigger, making it much easier to chain Spyro's different abilities together, only furthering how good it feels to control Spyro. Even when I missed certain jumps on accident, my main comment was, "I'm an idiot," and I almost always got it on my second attempt. There's a few portals around the realm you can find that actually leads us to the main levels in each of the areas. Each area is broken up as follows: the main realm itself, which is treated as a level, as well as 3 main levels, 1 flight level, and lastly, a boss level. This adds up to about 6 levels per realm that need to be completed. You can complete a level by obtaining all the gems, freeing all the dragons, and where possible, hunting down all the dragon eggs from the laughing thieves. Take that, you son of a bitch! Spyro is not alone in this journey, however, as he's accompanied by his dragonfly companion, Sparks. Sparks is not only a super creative way of showing off Spyro's health, as when he takes damage he changes color, but he's also functional. He brings gems close to Spyro directly to him, and if you click in one of the thumbsticks and hold it, he will guide you to any gems you missed in the level. This makes Sparks not only canonically an asset to Spyro, but also makes him feel like an asset to me, the player. I genuinely love Sparks because he's so damn useful. And he's really hot. He's not some punk-ass sidekick I'm forced to tolerate like Navi. He's an important part of the team. You can't have Spyro without Sparks. This also makes completing the game less of a chore. Normally, combing over levels this big to find hundreds of tiny collectibles sounds like a nightmare, but with Sparks and the open-ended nature of these levels, it never feels tedious. In fact, it can be too easy sometimes, but it's never boring. We then have the flight levels as mentioned, and these levels are a total blast. It's great to fly Spyro freely around these open areas tasked with destroying or flaming things like barrels, lights, or chests, or needing Spyro to fly through things like rings and checkpoints. In order to complete these levels, you need to achieve all 4 goals in one run. However, since these levels are less than a minute and a half long sometimes, even if you screw up over and over again, you just feel like you're that much closer to perfecting a run, creating a very addicting gameplay loop. I always look forward to the flight levels, and these would become a much loved staple of the Spyro series moving forward. They also take place in pretty unique locales. Typically, changing up the gameplay style this heavily can feel out of place, but they made the flight levels fit in perfectly with the central gameplay loop of Spyro, which is flaming and collecting things as you use your movement to navigate the world. The 100% completion bonus is even a level where you get to fly around freely, reclaiming all the treasure Gnasty Nork stole from the dragons. It's a great reward as the level feels like a victory lap where Spyro gets to use all of his abilities in order to destroy everything the Norks built and took from you. Speaking of using movement to navigate the world, Spyro eventually gains access to the Supercharge. The levels in which the Supercharge are used can be very exhilarating, and although the pathing can be tricky to figure out, it's extremely satisfying to launch Spyro across giant gaps using the Supercharge to reach secret areas. Although I refuse to believe that some of these dragons know how to supercharge, their bodies are not the right dimensions whatsoever. In Spyro the Dragon, there are 5 main realms, those being the Artisans, the Peacekeepers, the Magic Crafters, the Beast Makers, and the Dreamweavers. The dragons you find in each of these levels rarely tie into a central theme visually, but they are all very lively with a bunch of cute designs and their own names. Back in the original, they were all just recolors of the same model, so it's nice to see that they gave everyone their own pizzazz, even if they're only here for a few seconds. For example, in the swamp area of the game, most of the dragons speak with an accent. My favorite is the dragon holding a watermelon in Artisans. I just like the fact that he lugs a watermelon with him wherever he goes. All of the 5 realms are really distinct, and it gives the entire world of dragons a lot of personality. We go from lush fields, to a dry desert, to a magical realm in the sky and beyond. How did I get here? On top of that, each realm has its own enemies and fodder for Sparks, meaning very rarely do these environments blend together. Even Gnasty Nork's realm feels so cold and industrial, a far cry from the lush natural lands that the dragons typically inhabit. There was a serious effort in making each world feel alive and unique from one another, and that pays extreme dividends, especially when you first land in a world. Seeing the unique landscape as you hop off the balloon only serves to further the feeling of whimsy I mentioned earlier, and only makes it more exciting as you get closer and closer to finishing a world, as you wonder what radically different environment is coming next. Adding to the wonderful worlds is the music. Now, Spyro Reignited Trilogy has redone music, and that's cool and all, but I want to focus on the original composer of the music, Stewart Copeland, aka the drummer of my favorite band of all time, The Police. Listen, I love music in general, and my top 3 favorite bands are Queen, The Police, and Nirvana. I can take Nirvana and Queen in any order, but I'll take The Police above them any day. Anyway, as Mr. Copeland is a drummer, you'll find that a lot of the tracks are very percussion heavy, but light at the same time. Spyro runs around very nimbly and bouncily, and the light bouncy percussion suits the character and the world he inhabits perfectly. It's not my favorite of the original Spyro Trilogy soundtrack, but this is still a great listen that fits perfectly with the world around Spyro. I'd play some music from The Police, but I'm pretty sure Sting would personally come to my house and shatter my kneecaps. Now listen, with all the praise I've given Spyro the Dragon, you might be thinking I see almost no flaws in this game, and you'd actually be entirely incorrect. I truly do love this game, but it's not perfect by any means. No game is, except for Kingdom Hearts 2. The game can be incredibly simple at times. With my stream, I managed to tear through the first 2 worlds of the game in like an hour. Sure, I have lots of experience, but anyone experienced in platformers can likely replicate my results, as I wasn't doing any advanced tricks. I just dashed all over the place and sprayed fire like Spyro was on crack. You guys gotta remember, by 1998 we already had Crash Bandicoot, Mario 64, Banjo-Kazooie, and if you want to get technical, that little asshat Gex released earlier in the same year. All of those games have a lot more going on in them. Mario had a much grander sense of scale, Banjo had a greater sense of verticality, Crash Bandicoot made you want to cry from the difficulty, and Gex made you regret having ears.
This looks like an all-nighter at Richard Simmons' house.
Seriously though, I wouldn't blame anyone for thinking the game was a tad lacking in any real complexity. The gameplay loop is basically the same the entire time, with the only variety being visual and the odd moment you do a flight level. The bosses also all suck major dick. Seriously, these take almost no effort at all. First of all, I couldn't even tell what the hell Blowhard was supposed to be in the original game on PS1. He actually looks like a messed up Halloween decoration from the dollar store. Second of all, why the hell would you name a boss Blowhard? However, even with Blowhard's less, mangled design, these bosses just don't do it. Some of the most linear stages in the game with some of the least amount of collectibles. These stages are gone in an instant. Even the bosses you face are complete jokes, as some of them are less lethal than the random enemies in their own stage. One of the bosses is literally a sheep in stilts, and while it's a good gag, it makes the dragons around Spyro seem like complete morons who couldn't fight off a cold, let alone an army of angry Norks. I'm just saying, the orcs from Lord of the Rings would absolutely devastate Spyro's entire civilization. Don't even get me started on Jacques. You quite literally chase this marionette-looking loser around and flame him 3 times until he drops dead. Even Nasty Nork is a complete joke, as the hardest part of his fight is chasing these stupid thieves to get a key, as after you get 2 keys, you just chase them to the end and flame them. Why? If Nasty clearly demonstrates the power to turn all of the Dragon Elders to crystal, why does he not at least try to hurt me? He could have at least used an AK like the Norks in the original did, but no, apparently the guns are only for these, handsome fellows. Listen, while Spyro may be simple and may have some incredibly lame bosses, I think the game makes up for these things by just being plain fun. Sure, you can get a more in-depth involved experience elsewhere, but Spyro 1 doesn't concern itself with being the best video game ever or even the best platformer. It just wants to be a fun, good time, and I think it reaches that goal on all fronts. It's a great first attempt. I don't think I can make this any more obvious, but I love this game. And if you haven't, please, for the love of God, try it out. It's short enough that even if it's not your cup of tea, you won't have lost a lot of time to it. However, if you do end up liking it, what you stand to enjoy is a unique, charming experience that defines part of Sony's early career in the console market. Spyro was and still is a huge part of why the PlayStation succeeded in the 90s. There's a reason that even now people complain he wasn't in PlayStation All-Stars or included on the PS1 Classic. You cannot talk about the magic of the PS1 without talking about Spyro. Whether it's the fun and engaging gameplay that can be played over and over again, the bouncy music, or the charming graphics, I think everyone is something they can find to enjoy here in Spyro the Dragon, regardless of its simplicity. Hell, I'm surprised this universe hasn't been adapted into a movie or kids show of some kind. And no, the hideous Netflix Skylanders show does not count. You know what? I had such a good time playing Spyro 1 again, I think I'm going to tackle the other 2 games. So moving forward, we're going to be reviewing Spyro 2 and 3. If you guys want to be a part of me recording the footage for those games, go ahead and subscribe to be notified when I go live. Other than that, thank you so much for sticking around to the end of this video. It means the world to me.